I wanted to add that in the movie kind of hints at it, but it doesn't go deep enough where throughout the movie, until he takes the water of life, he's reluctant to be this Messiah. And
Yeah.
then once he takes the water of life, all of a sudden it's like he's like his mom, where he's just driven to take this path of being the Messiah.
You felt they didn't show that?
No. What I'm saying is they didn't show that, yes, he's being the Messiah and going forward with it, and the fact that they're gonna basically do war against other houses is gonna lead to a lot of death. But what it doesn't show in the movie, because the book talks about, is once he sees these, it's like the Marvel Endgame when Doctor Strange sees all those multiple futures.
Right.
When Paul takes the water of life and he sees all these futures, just like Doctor Strange. Remember, Doctor Strange says, we can only win one way, and there's only one way we can win. In this way, all this stuff happens. All these people will disappear, die. Thanos will supposedly win. Right. It's the same thing in Dune, where the only reason why Paul takes up the mantle after drinking the water of life and proceeds with, full go at being the Messiah is because the route that he takes, where there's going to be a lot of deaths because of the war, is actually going to be the least amount of death overall if he didn't become the Messiah.
But they did show the part where he said, "I see all these ways," and he said,
"Yeah, but they don't." He doesn't say. He doesn't say in the movie that me becoming the Messiah and going forward with this is going to lead. It's going to be a lot of deaths, but it's actually the best way to get us past what's going to be even worse if I don't take this. That's what I think that
he doesn't go into detail about that.
Okay,
he goes into there's deaths, but I know what you're saying. He doesn't go into detail why he has.
But still, I took it as he's saying all these deaths and all these things he saw, but he said there's a way. He did the hand gesture like this,
a narrow way,
we could get through it.
He does,
and not only that, before he was reluctant, that's when he started talking all this stuff and kind of rounding everybody up and talking about sending them to paradise and stuff. So you already knew he was down with going. Like, that was the path he saw, and after that, he was a whole other Paul. He was moving different. He was talking different, to the fact that his lady was looking at him sideways like, do I know you? Matter of fact, she stopped talking with him in a way because he started acting like that. So you saw that he saw a path, and he said we could needle through where we could, and he didn't say anything about it's going to be perfect or nothing like that, but he sees a way. So it was enough for him to feel comfortable with to move forward. And before he didn't even want to go talk to the ones in the South or anything like that, he was rounding up the people to the point where he was like, who gonna stand against me? And they rose to the occasion, and he kept talking mess, and he started preaching on them, and like, your mama this, your grandmama lost her eye in 2 days ago, and she was died, and she was 19, and everybody started bowing down. Who's with me? That's where that went. Well, no, I think they did a good job on that. For me, I was kind of pumped on that part.
Well, he wasn't, to be fair. So Timothy Chalamet did not convince me that he was Paul Atreides until that scene you're talking about.
Me too.
Yeah. So
when he accepted what he's going to do.
Yes. That also, to be fair to Denis Villeneuve, he did do something that Lynch didn't do. How Lynch ended the film making Paul the hero. I loved it. That's what got me into reading the books. What Denis did, now that I'm older and I reflect on the whole series, I look at Paul a little differently. So what Denis did by showing him as an anti-hero towards the end, that was different. And I do commend him on that. Because, and then like Chani looking like, who is this dude?
Right.
So I did like that. And maybe I'm thinking more about how I feel. Well, so I did like that because that was different. And that was accurate, actually. In a sense that, Paul was reluctant, and now Paul sees everything. I mean, he's the hero for the story, but we'll see what happens next. Now,
unfortunately, he's a hero like his own story. Like that's the thing. It's always like whoever lives to tell the story, or if your side wins, that's who the hero is. Like, so regardless of what happens to everybody else, if he gets what he wants in his story, then he won. He's the hero. just like the
Yeah.
villain could be the hero in their own story. So
Well, yeah, Lex Luthor's the hero in his story. So.
right. Something to mention that I thought was interesting, but I understand kind of why, is that the whole thing about his sister, right? Because I was thinking, like, because of the movie that I saw, the first one, I was thinking his sister should be walking around sometime, right?
And she's
So I was
supposed to
thinking,
be.
Yeah, but they didn't do a time jump, so she was still pregnant. So it was no time jump, so she couldn't have had the baby already. So the way they handled it, I thought was pretty cool for me, because I thought that, like, the whole thing when they realized, oh, we gave her that and she's with child. I think we messed up. And I like the acknowledgement of it. Like, even when the one was about to die, she's like, I think we done effed up now. And so I thought the fact that she was talking to the mom, because it also almost speaks to the whole conversation with mothers being in connection with the babies within them and stuff like that. So all that kind of stuff, I didn't mind. Because to be honest, in the original movie, it did throw me off when this little baby comes up and just starts stabbing people. It threw me off, right? Just because.
It was cool, but
I'm just kind of like, wait, what? Where did she come from? And then because she just kind of comes out of nowhere, she got her whole little garb. I'm like, they had time to make you a little outfit and stuff, so it was fine, right? And even though that was kind of creepy, I think that this almost made more sense to do it this way, because a lot of stuff like the weird deformed figures that does the space travel stuff, all that
Guild
stuff.
Navigators.
So all that stuff, he's deliberately not touching with stuff, because, like I say, I think he's doing that fine thread between what it should be and Star Wars, because he knows if he crosses this line, he possibly could just, lose the whole thing. And so some of the stuff that he changed, I thought, okay, he's not explaining time travel. He's just saying spice is involved. So that's fine for me. But I knew in other movies, these weird creatures that was kind of like, And then with this little, the Omen child walking around and just kind of, getting people, I thought it was kind of better that she wasn't around, because it almost would have been, it's how, in the world that he built, how far can this bend without losing it? Now, would it be right to have her around and doing that? Yes, but also it could be done in a way where, since Paul is dealing with the situation, he should be the one that kind of finishes it up and cleans it up too. It's almost like when I don't like when other characters come in last minute and this is your bad guy and you're supposed to be fighting the Joker, and then Superman comes out and take out the Joker. Like, wait a minute, that was Batman's job. That's his villain. Let him have take out his own situation. Let him clean his own house. So I didn't mind so much when Paul, did that to his grandfather versus his sister coming out of nowhere, talking beyond her age. And I understand why, because she was infused with it. And I thought that was beautiful how they showed her eyes glowing in the womb and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was neat, and I understood. For diehards who wanted it, see her walking around, I understand that, but I also understood why you would kind of negate that kind of thing without bringing too much in that you have to explain, and how that kind of tumbles and hit other things as well.
So let me ask you a question, Jay. So when you saw that scene where Paul killed his grandfather, and he called him grandfather first, and the look on his eyes, on the Baron's face, was that an iconic moment for you? How did you feel watching it? Huh?
I was surprised. Right. Just like just like I found out, just like when they said that he was saying that was his. But I knew before, because when Paul said to his mother, like, about who her father was, so I already knew that was his. Just like he referenced to the to Faye about being cousin. So I knew that already, because he acknowledged his mom being like
Harkonnen.
I was like, damn. So to me, I was more reflecting off of the Baron's look in his eye, like, what? Kind of thing. And then the people around watching more so, because I already knew the truth because of his, conversation with his mom, which really was the moment for me that was just kind of like, wow.
So that's a
trip.
So that was an iconic moment for you?
I didn't see that coming. And I thought it was just so funny. And it made me think about real world, like how, like, a lot of the politicians and stuff we have, they all related. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's, people compare this to the original movie. I was comparing this to our government, our religion, and our stuff like that. I was doing one-to-one to all that stuff, and like, this is just too much. We're playing for the same team and don't know. We choosing, but we're playing for the same team and we don't know it. And how all the stuff happens behind the scenes. So I took it more like a lesson in government and religion, more so than I did anything else.
So because of you and my friend Brian from last night, I have problems with this film. I don't have as many. I had different problems with this film versus the first one, but the fact that Denis made that scene iconic for you and for other people who have not read the book, this movie is this movie is successful. If this movie gets people to read those books, then okay, I have to recommend the movie begrudgingly. Because that was always an important scene for me. And for me, you know, I wanted more, but I didn't think about, well, if I didn't read the book, how would I have felt about seeing that scene in this movie? Because that would have been a great surprise for me. But I already knew about it. You didn't, and for a lot of people who haven't read the book, that should be an aha moment for them. And
but I wouldn't have been taken back if that moment wouldn't have happened. Like, say they wasn't related or whatever, then I still enjoyed it. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like I didn't like the movie, and then as soon as I found out they were connected, it was like, aha. It was just like, that's kind of how that crap works. And once again, it's another thing that they never normally give us in these kind of stories, but they did. And I thought,
but I get that. But what I'm talking about though is that, to me, that moment is so important because it ties the whole thing together. And when you don't have that moment, it's doing the film a disservice. But people don't know because they don't know about it. But it's like can I even watch Empire Strikes Back without that scene? Can I enjoy that movie without that scene between Darth Vader and Luke? That scene just put everything in focus. It just made the movie even better. You know, when things were falling apart, just Han Solo getting frozen, all that. Everything went bad. But that scene, I always go back to that scene. So I see the importance of that scene. And now I'm gauging other moments in other films, especially like in science fiction, like that, with that. So that's why I put so much on people knowing who the Baron was to Paul, how this mortal enemy, how he's been trained to hate all his life, is his direct ancestor. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, no, I thought it was cool, but like I said, I liked it in spite of that. But like, right. And the thing too is that the fact that, you know, Star Wars is you know, was more taken by folks in general, that, you know, these kind of moments of, yeah, I am your father or whatever, those are kind of, it's almost a trope now. And so it's like one of those kind of things. You could be the originator or something, but if you don't, you know,
put it out there first, no one knows.
You're not presented in a certain kind of way first, then yeah, then you're copying them.
Because Frank Herbert did it first, but they didn't know.
Like,
they
didn't know.
Like, so I hear
so it's always very interesting. Like I said,
I gotta think about that. Maybe I'll take that back, but we'll see. But
yeah. It was like I said, it was a hard thing to thread, especially like I said, he's trying not to redo the thing that's already been done. And I think I even heard him saying that, you know, he's trying to keep the intentions of Herbert's, what he was trying to say with it. And so he's admitting that he is doing the book, but also kind of his intentions. Because he had mentioned something that I'm not going to even say on here because it might be related to something that's coming up later. But he was saying that he was considering everything that was done about this series and stuff. And with that, you can move differently. As opposed
well, yeah, there's so much more material now. There's more books. There's backstories that you can add.
But also with that, unlike the original stories, you could be thinking you're going down a narrative a certain kind of way, right? But then later on, more stuff is added. And then you'd be like, well, if I knew this, I would have did the beginning differently. And so he's doing something that the original author couldn't do because the hindsight. So sometimes somebody can have a clear interpretation of an artist's work only because they have the full breadth of it versus just the beginning part, you know, because if you knew everything, you would have everything laid out where front and back, no matter where you went, it would be connected. But there's a lot of stuff that have to be revised and changed a little bit to make stuff fit. And so it's just interesting that he is doing this with somebody's intention, because we could think something about something and be wrong, right? We have an interpretation of it and be wrong.
Sure.
But if you could do it over again with what you knew now, you would start it different. You would start differently. Yeah. And so I kind of feel this is kind of like, okay, this is your story that you wrote, but this is kind of the intentions that you kind of had as well. And so I could put things in it earlier than you would have put yourself, because you didn't come to that part yet when you did.
Oh, I mean, I guess
that makes sense. What I'm saying?
Yeah. I guess what I have to say, you know, is just that there were definitely things I liked about it, and I could have seen myself giving it a full approval, but I see half measures.
Mhm.
So I mean, I guess that's part of the problem. Like I said, Austin Butler's performance was great, and when Paul took the water of life, and like I said, when he said signs, like I said earlier, talk more about him being a Quizlex Hoderick and how he can be in, more than one place at a time, how he can see, show his power, and then leave us with that. So everyone's like, I can't wait to see what happens next. I didn't feel that way when I walked out of the theater. I was happy to see that the Emperor got his, but I felt like, okay, there's all this talk about what the Bene Gesserit's doing, but you need to say that. You need to say now, he's ahead of his time. He came before he was supposed to. What you gonna do now? He's one of you, but a male version, and he sees both sides. Say that, and you didn't. But like you said, I mean,
it's not over. And like I said, yeah.
Is it supposed to be? I heard there wasn't gonna be a part 3. They was just gonna go like.
He said that he's working on. I don't know how. Okay, I don't know what he's going to incorporate into it, but he's working on a part 3. So I don't know if that's going to be a different book or the rest of this story or the part of the book, the next book over. I don't know. Okay. But he's saying he's working on a script that he's still hammering out, but he got the most of it together. Okay. And so I couldn't imagine it being too far off track from what's going so far. But but still, that doesn't tell you exactly what parts he's going to put in or negate or what he's going to, because I will definitely say a lot of the insight and information really start kicking in towards the end of the movie. And that's with a lot of stuff. A lot of enlightenment was coming up towards the end. We had so much action stuff going, and then they kind of did a dump. Now they did a nice dump as far as being able to put a whole bunch of stuff in a good way where it fed into the story and things were happening while it was being said, but it was still a lot of dumping at the end and a lot of truths and things coming out that wasn't said before at the end. So I couldn't imagine that it would be more of that continuing on with the next one coming up, being that we just came off of this dip of a ride of a movie on this section of the ride. So we'll see.
Sorry, I wanted to really bring up real quick, Jason, because you talked about how Denny's version doesn't talk about those creature or humans that are basically become these creatures that allow for the travel, right? The interstellar travel.
The Guild Navigators.
The high what are they? The Highliners in the book, or I can't remember their names, but and I kind of understand why Danny didn't do that in the first or second one. It's in line with the style that he's incorporated with both movies, where it's even the second one, as much as there was more action in the second one versus the first one, there's still like a slow burn in terms of like the information he provides. And something as big as that, like where these humans become these creatures, that is so big that that movie would literally have to have another hour and a half just to cover because when he covers new stuff, that's the reason why his movies are so long. Is he doesn't try to rush. He's very organic. He tries to be very like a methodical way of introducing something to allow it to kind of sit and resonate with the audience, versus just like you're just dumping information and you just accept it as you have to accept that there's these things and I'm not really going to put any information behind it and you just accept it for what it is. No, but what he does is instead he allows, that's why his movies are so long, because he allows the organic slow burn to set into the story so that you could accept what he's telling you as fact for that movie.
Like I was saying, it wouldn't match the environment. So I said I understand the things about about the space worm things. I understand the thing about, like I said, the sister, Paul's little sister stuff. So like I said, I understand the stuff that was negated because, like I said, that's not the world he built, and this is his interpretation, and he is trying to stay on that line of being popular but also being kind of anti-culture. He's at that fine line, and it's almost where both sides can't resist. If you like artsy movies, you got this one. You want action movies, you got this one. You want intrigue, you got this one. You got a thriller, you got this one. You want a fight scene, you got this. So he's threading a lot of lines. And so it takes a certain director to to be able to do that. And because with Lynch, he did a great job, but he was very direct. But very direct gives you very exact answers and responses back as well. There's not a whole bunch of that net is to catch something in particular, and you will catch it when you have a strong net that's shaped this long, this wide. You're going to catch something that's going to be that size. Something that's kind of weaved a little wider, a little oblong, and it's going to catch more stuff. So you're playing that kind of thing, but it's not as big as a net as Star Wars was that almost caught everything. So he has a customized net, not in particular where it just catches certain size fish, but he catches medium size versus Star Wars, who catches sharks and dolphins and and goldfish and all that. So it's a whole different net that he made and that he designed. And like I said, it's a beautiful blockbuster independent film.
It's interesting though that and I agree with you where you said, Jason, where you said that there's kind of like a dump at the end where in order to it's as much as there's action throughout this movie, it still feels like it's like a slow, methodical, and then all of a sudden things ramp up. But it feels like, at least for me, it felt like things got kind of rushed in the end of the movie in order to get to what he was trying to get to. And I do want to go back to something Keith talked about, the style of the way they ride the worms. I didn't like that either, Keith. Because the thing I thought that was a kind of a dumb way to, not dumb, but it's just like, it's not the ideal way, and why the Lynch version is a better way, where the worms are actually on top of the sand, where they're these gigantic. Because one of the things the flaws I saw in the way Denny did it, where they're like still in the sand, so it looks like they're like basically surfing on the sand. If you have it that way, they're ground level, right? Yeah. So you could literally, as an enemy, you can literally just shoot them because they're at the same level you are. But if you, in the Lynch version, they're literally hundreds of feet above the ground, where it's like, aside from the intimidation factor, where if you see this gigantic worm coming at you and you're on ground level.
But you still can shoot them from a spaceship. You still can shoot down on top of them, no matter how tall they are. You're in a spaceship.
I know, but ground troops. I'm talking about the level of what the ground, because it first starts off with like the ground troop level, like when you're fighting. Yeah, because it's coming from the perspective of like they're coming as a sneak attack. If you know they're coming, of course you're gonna already stop.
Those things that big, regardless if they on top of it or halfway through it, they're still bigger than the things that's on the ground, and they would still scoop them up and run them over, regardless.
But and they I don't know.
They still can be shot from the space. Well, they showed you. Didn't they show them coming across everything and kind of knocking it all out of the way? That was a big dramatic scene. Y'all didn't catch that part.
And yeah, but and another thing, and I know this is I'm going.
Wait a minute. So y'all say y'all didn't see when they came across all those tanks and troops and all that kind of stuff? Y'all, because people in grounds, people in tanks and ships and stuff. Y'all didn't see when those worms came and knocked through all that stuff?
I saw that. But,
so what are you talking about? You didn't see it? Or did Keith, you say you didn't see it?
No, I saw it.
I don't remember that part, I don't think.
I am saying from a strategic, yes, if you're on a worm, whether it's like underground or above ground, at the end of the day, if the worm comes at you, what are you going to do about it? You can't do anything on the other side of that.
Right.
My point is, and this is, again, I hate to do this. This is from the book kind of thing, because if the people who don't read it, they're not going to care. But the whole thing about them being above ground is when they show the scene, when they pull back the skin of the worm, right, with the hooks, in Herbert's the book, when they do that, it makes the worm turn up because they don't want sand to go into the open exposed skin. And so the reason why that in Lynch's version, why they're above ground, is because they're protecting that exposed part of their skin that is pulled up by the hooks from getting sand into that exposed area. That's why they're above the ground. And let's forget about that. Let's just say from a tactical military standpoint, yes, if you have the worms, it doesn't matter if they're underground. Once they come at you, you can't do anything, right? Either way. But you have to say that from a military standpoint, in terms of pure intimidation, if you actually see it above ground coming at you, I mean, you're just
It's scary.
It's supposed to terrify the
They-
the Emperor's fighting troops, which is up until the point of when they found out the Fremen were actually better fighting troops. Those Sardaukar troops are actually supposed to be the ultimate like military like troops. The fact of seeing those worms, if they're about like that, would just terrify anybody trying to like. If you see an enemy coming at you with gigantic 500-foot worm.
But did you see the part when they were coming at him and you saw like the almost looked like the teeth of the worms coming at him? It wasn't like it was halfway in. Did you see when they were coming?
No, I saw that.
So and also when he grappling on and he was almost falling off, you saw how much of a drop he had if he fell off. So that's how high up off the ground that he is. So I'm not understanding.
Oh, I guess I didn't like the aesthetic of them when they're riding the worms and they're like look like they're just kind of like moons walking across. You know what I'm saying? Like it
didn't look like that to me, but that's
underneath
fine.
the ground basically.
Yeah, I don't know. I just I mean
just when they were riding them across the desert, it just because we're used to seeing them on top of the desert when they're riding them, and it just looks very cool and it's intimidating. You're like, what's going on? Are you riding a worm?
I wonder too if doing it that way was the cheaper way in terms of CGI versus seeing this gigantic. I mean, you saw the worms, yes, we saw the worms, but we never really saw like the way Lynch does it, and you could tell because the CGI back then wasn't what it is now, so you could clearly tell it's not going to be as good. But in Denny's version, I never really see a scene where, like, if they're on the worm, it's close up. I never really see where the worm is above ground and then they're on top of the worm. It's always like you're all close up, or it's just the worm by itself. Like, you could see like the head of the worm with the jaws.
I saw several scenes like that, especially when he got the grandpa worm and he was like riding it, and all that stuff that wasn't sand where it was halfway in, that was sand kicking up from it going across. And but you never really saw, like in Lynch's version, you'll see where they're like this gigantic, like exposed out. Well, the special effects ain't gonna be the same. It ain't gonna be. It'd probably be less. Okay, put it like this. I don't think that Lynch would be having extra sand kicking up dust. It wouldn't be as realistic for that. So if you had a giant worm going across the sand with no dust coming up, I think that would be less realistic. But that's what they probably would have then.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is that I think that I don't know if it was done because of it's like hard to do that effect, like without it being like cheesy or like somehow like.
So when you saw the worms coming out to attack, right, the Emperor and all that kind of stuff, and attack all the folks, did that look fake to you? Because that shows the whole mouths and stuff being open and coming towards you. So that's
no, it doesn't look like. But I'm saying that you never actually see where if there's somebody on, if the Fremen are on the worm, or when Paul is on the worm, or even when they're taking the mom to the south and she's in that little protective cubby hole she's in, it's always close up, right you never actually see it from a distant shot where it's above ground, because they established it where it was always going to be underground unless it's going to rear up to attack.
Okay, so when Paul was riding it across, did you see him on top of that from a distance, or you saw it close up? When they was waving at him like, "Hey, Paul!"
Whenever you see them riding, it's always under the sand.
That wasn't under sand. That was sand kicking up. He was above ground when he was riding. Because, like I said, you saw how high it was, because when he fell off, was hanging on by the hook. He was like trying not to fall and get lost in the dust and the sand and stuff.
No, I know, but that
and so when
I remember, that was close up. I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm just saying that I felt like it was, they were intentionally trying to not show them above, like when people are riding it, they were intentionally not trying to show any long shot, distant shot. It was always very close up, and I think it's because with it was good. It's not. I have no complaints about the actual effects. Very good.
I would just refer you to the trailer where it shows Paul riding it, and you see the folks like, hey, and they waving at him, and you see him in the distance. And
No, I know, but you don't see.
you can't see him waving back. He's so far. That's not a close up shot. And when they showed all three kind of on top and kind of spreading, going different directions, how they were steering them different ways, that was an overhead shot. That wasn't right on them. Is what I'm.
I don't. Maybe I'm just. It's just legit. I'm just being OCD about the details. I just feel like nothing against the thing, but I just feel like they were trying to. I don't know if it's because to add also the intrigue and mystery of the worms and what they represented, but I just feel like they didn't show enough how really daunting and intimidating in terms of size that the worms are. I get it the way he did it, but I just feel like it was done through a filter. I guess I'll say it that way. It felt like it was done.
Yeah, I was disappointed with it myself. So,
but I mean it's not something that would have made me like not recommend the movie. I still like the movie for what it was, you know, and I tried, like I said, I tried to separate as much as possible and pretend that I didn't read the books and that I didn't watch the Lynch movie and just watch and see if I could enjoy this movie on its own merit. And I did enjoy this movie on its own merits.
Okay, when you get a chance, I sent you guys something, a screenshot from the thing.
oh, I remember
Okay.
that.
Okay, I'm just saying, but
I remember that scene. Yeah.
Oh, okay, just saying. But was it anything else? I'm trying to think. There was so much in this movie, but we did.
So, do you
cover
guys
a lot.
understand what I mean when I say I didn't really care for Rebecca Ferguson's portrayal?
No, I liked her. Like I still liked her.
Compared to Francesca Annis, it's like night and day. It just
yeah, because it's a different interpretation.
it was too dark for me.
Just like Paul looked like a grown man to me, but I know he's supposed to be a kid. It's just like,
Right,
now
sure.
210. So sometimes you just kind of like, oh, I'm in high school for 12 o'clock shadow, and that's fine because you know he's supposed to be a kid.
Right.
Or Peter Parker, Tommy McGuire. I had to think that he was in high school, even though he was a grown man running after that bus. Let me on.
I mean, I feel you, but I mean, Rebecca she was too hardened. I just didn't care for it. Very masculine. She seemed more like the Reverend Mother, Helen Geis Mohim. She, like I said, when I looked at her, I didn't feel like this was Paul's mom. I didn't feel like this was this beautiful Bene Gesserit woman who was bound to duty but defied it because of her love for the Duke. I didn't get that vibe from her at all. I got manipulation from her and just hard edge and just not soft at all. I mean,
I'll say, Keith, I agree with you in terms of the first movie that I didn't like Ferguson's interpretation of where in terms of like being loving, why would this woman defy the orders of, like, the way she acted in both movies? I would think that, well, she would have actually gone in line with what
exactly
Bene Gesserit. I'll say that in the first movie. I'll say in the second movie, once she took the water of life, that she goes, that interpretation fits in terms of, because we have to remember too, once we find out in the second movie that she is Harkonnen, that would make sense why she is like cold and detached, and because she is Harkonnen. She's not a trait, it's like by blood, so she would have the traits of the Harkonnen, in which there's a ruthlessness in a very strategic, very strategy type of thinking that falls more in line with the Harkonnen versus like the heartfelt emotion of the trait inside, which she doesn't have because she's not a trait.
Like I said, she had a different job in the first one than she did the second one. I thought the first one, she felt like more like a concerned mom, and not that she didn't in the second one, because she did there as well, but she had so much stuff coming upon her. Like, it's almost like she's trying to control the situation and stay ahead of it because she knows more, but it's getting her into more trouble, and she has to be deeper than she would like to be. And you can see the point where she felt uncomfortable, like, hey, you're going to be the mother, and she's kind of like, I don't want to take this thing. So it's funny how she wants things to work a certain kind of way, but she's only invested so much, but she has to kind of be put, and so she gets drug along in this whole thing. But I think it cost her more than she thought it was going to cost her, and so to see her more on top of things versus I'm in it now and I gotta figure out how to steer from this new positioning. I thought that was kind of interesting. I like how she kind of handled herself. I liked her less because I really saw that she didn't care. She was really about self, and she's not wrong. She's caring about her and her son and her baby, and I understand that. And so she has a different kind of thing where she would have to do some messed up stuff to win, and she's choosing for her to win. And it's not wrong for her, but it could cost everybody else so much. Because we already saw that she already chose herself when she chose to give Paul's father a son instead of a daughter. So we've seen her kind of going outside what she's supposed to be doing already. But this was a different situation. But we saw her being calculated. But then you also know that when she took that stuff and she had those other mothers before her in her, you could see the personality change. You could see the concerns being a little bit different, her being more calculated and stuff. So I didn't put it all on her. I took it partly because she wasn't of her own mind. She has a little daughter that's kind of giving her, nudging her in a way too, and she even had concerns like, she's talking to me, Paul, she's talking to me. So it's all this stuff that she's being steered, and so it's amazing that she didn't just lose her mind with all the prodding that she's getting from all these different directions. And so for her to still find herself within that, I'll give her credit for. But you could tell that she wasn't the same person, but really she wasn't the same person in this one. And
I'll give you that.
You couldn't.
No, you're right. No, point taken. No. In that regard, once she took the water of life, she wasn't going to be the same person. Not with all those memories from all the women before her, all the Reverend mothers who ever existed.
But even his sister on her was taking a toll on her, and that's the one she kind of called out. So I kind of assumed all the rest of it was coming along with that drink, and she even said, like, I get everything. I get all the information. I get all that stuff. I also even get all the pain, which she didn't even want to go through. So as you can see, she was kind of reluctant in a lot of the stuff. Yeah. She's going to get dragged through it regardless. Yeah. And it was interesting to see her kind of fight that, and it gave me a different kind of respect for her. Did I like her? I didn't like her as much as I did the first one, but she had to be a different person. Just like Paul, I started kind of looking at him sideways. I liked him when he was fighting, his path that he's supposed to take. And I kind of respected him, because when everybody thought he was afraid or unconfident, like he knew what it meant. And that's why he was reluctant. And so when I see that he accepted it and he's going to go for it anyway, I'm like, man, I understand that you think you could do this, but you taking the people on this trip that you may not be able to keep them safe, but for sure you gonna get your part out of it, and it's your revenge, right? It's the ego. You still went with ego, and your ego made you think you could do this and get yours and give them theirs in a way. And I thought, I liked you better when you kind of fought it, but I understand. It was a lot going on, and he had more information that made him feel like I could do this now, right? I saw a little bit before with the spice. Now I see a little bit more with the, with the life water. And so sometimes, you get more, or you think you could do more, but that doesn't mean that you're above slipping and falling.
Well, and to be fair to Paul Atreides / Muad'Dib, mm-hmm. He had to do what he had to do. He had to do it. The Baron, the Harkonnens they couldn't stay on that planet, and the Emperor and the Harkonnens have to be stopped because they just get worse. I mean, so I guess it's a question of who's going to be better in the long run. Will he be a better leader? Will there be peace in the universe? Will Arrakis change? Will the Fremen be better off? I mean, those are questions that that you're left with. So yeah, he was very
it's almost like the passionate pimp thing. It's like, well, he was a pimp, but he was a passionate pimp. It's like, it's still a pimp.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, Paul has to get his hands dirty, definitely. I mean, I get that, and you're right, but it's just like when you think about what the Emperor put in motion, and the Harkonnens were just happy to oblige. No. Everyone's being manipulated by the Bene Gesserit still. But I mean, what I like about this story, I guess in the overall, even though we have a messianic figure, and we do, what I like about this story is that when you see these powerful women who are nicknamed witches from some people, who have mastery of their body and their physiology and in the mind, they can control you with their voice, they can beat you in battle, they can control the reproductive organs. I mean, When
They
you
can
see
change
how,
poison. They can change poison.
they can change poison. So they're bad. They're amazing, and that and they're beautiful, and they can seduce anybody. I mean, I get all that, but what I like about the story, at the end of the day, it shows you what happens when power corrupts, and it shows you even with them, as powerful as they were from behind the scenes, and as arrogant as they were, they thought they could create something that they could control, that they had been trying to do for hundreds of years with and what everybody missed, especially the Emperor, the Harkonnens, and the Bene Gesserit. They underestimated the power of love. And that's, to me, in a nutshell, and I think I spoke about this probably in our first podcast about this, when I think about Dune in that first book, the power of love. If it wasn't for Jessica's love for Duke Leto and giving him that son, that changed everything for everyone. And because the Bene Gesserit, that's the one thing they don't value. They don't value love. Not at all. It's nothing for them to send a woman to a house and say, have 3 or 4 of his kids, and then call her back and have her go to another house and do the same thing. There's nothing for them to do that. It's almost, in some ways, it's kind of creepy, like slavery. Yeah, so it's nothing for them to do that, and and they think it's greater good. I mean, there's probably a psychology behind all that. I mean, but it's just like, in some ways, it's like being kind of like a loveless whore. It's who has power. It's very interesting and intriguing, but whether it's a woman or a man with power, here we go again. When you don't have love and you're consumed with this corruption, and you underestimate the value of what love can do, inspire people, unite people, make them brave, make them rebellious. It's just interesting to me that when you look at all the different layers of this story and that universe, for me, that's what it goes back to, is the underestimating of love and the true power that has.
Yeah. And I kind of take it as when two powerful beings fight against each other, like King Kong and Godzilla, Tokyo loses.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are repercussions for the Bene Gesserit, for the Harkonnens, and for the Atreides, for Cornell. Yeah.
So all this power grabbing, the Fremen is the one that's losing. Regardless
for the universe.
For all the stuff that they're doing, it's the Fremen who's on the bottom.
I don't know.
For now. Huh?
I don't know if this should be a separate conversation, but this movie definitely kind of made me see the Atreides in a different light, where I would almost argue that the Atreides, except for the idea of like avenging your father and what the Harkonnens and what the Emperor did, I would almost argue that you could say the Atreides are actually the bad guys in this version of the story, the Dune story, because as much as what happened to Duke Leto and how the Atreides family was drastically affected, we never know. I mean, if things had been left status quo and the Harkonnens, because we have to remember that the whole thing about Leto, like the Emperor played both the Atreides and the Harkonnens, because initially, remember, the only reason why the Atreides family were able to go on Dune and fight against the Harkonnens was because the Emperor was allowing them to do that, and also giving them the power to do that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done that. But if things had been left the way they were, where the Harkonnens were still, because you have to remember that the Harkonnens were very successful in terms of getting the spice. They became very wealthy, a wealthy family, because of spice mining. And to all the other houses that needed spice, as you could not like the Harkonnens, but they were doing a good job in doing it. If things had been left status quo, I mean, aside from Leto not being killed, I mean, the Fremen still being under the yoke of the Harkonnens, although they're under the yoke of whichever house goes there, which ended up being the Atreides. Who's to say that if things were just left the way they were, that there wouldn't have been as much bloodshed as there is now, where now it's going to ramp up because of the fact that now the Fremen and Paul, being their leader, are basically warring against all the other houses. I mean, yes, that's a path he mentions. The Atreides do. I mean, Paul says that there's that narrow path. That's the best path to take in terms of the least amount of collateral damage. But there is still going to be collateral damage. So can you argue that in this version and Denny's version that the Atreides, you can view them as actually, I'll say that they're actually worse than the Harkonnens, because with the Harkonnens, yes, they're portrayed as bad guys. It's only against the Atreides. They don't go against the other houses. Paul is actually going to go against the rest of the houses. That's a bigger thing than just. It's going beyond just avenging your father. You're actually like making it personal by. It's not business anymore. You're like in Godfather. It's not personal.
But it actually is business though, Joselito, because everyone's been manipulated. The Emperor and the House Harkonnen, they manipulated the whole situation. So, I mean, to be fair to the other houses, when they get that message that Paul's going to be the new emperor, that's the first time they heard about that. First of all, they thought he was dead. Second of all, they don't know what happened on Dune. They have no idea of all the shenanigans that went down in the treachery. Right. They have no idea.
They just supposed to get wiped off and disappear.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I know.
All they know is that the emperor. I mean, they don't know that the emperor put all this in motion.
Right.
That he was shady as hell.
Yeah, but let's.
So okay. Hold on. So from the noble houses standpoint, from the Lancerage standpoint, they're like, we don't know you. Why are you the new emperor when we're all here? There was no, we don't know nothing about what's going on with you. We ain't seen you in 10, 15 years. We don't know nothing. As far as we know, you are the bad guy. So now, and Paul has to defend his decision now. He has to defend what he's done and what he's gone through. So they've all been manipulated and forced into this situation. So, and that goes back to everybody who's been manipulating, the Bene Gesserit, but especially the Emperor. The Emperor knew what he was doing. The Emperor did this, but they don't know that. So it's sad. I mean, it's sad because he has to do this now.
But also the Emperor probably was kind of like being manipulated too by Bene Gesserit.
He was
on the outside, and his daughter. So he's kind of surrounded and don't even know it, possibly.
Exactly.
In the way that it's happening.
Yeah, so this is Paul. I mean, so this is a situation, and the only way through it is going to be through force, because there's no talking. Because even if he were to meet with these houses and talk to them, they're not going to believe him per se, because like I said, they ain't seen this boy. All they know, he's been gone. Unless they've had bad interactions with the Emperor, they're going to be like, all we know is that you're like a usurper, dude.
Okay, let's look at it this way then. Aside from what the Emperor and the Harkonnens did to try to destroy the Atreides house, right? That's just that one incident or the attempt of what they were trying to do. Let's put that aside. And from a practical business standpoint, in terms of all you care about is the money, right? You get the most amount of money with the least amount of collateral damage. Wouldn't you say that we understand why Paul is doing what he's doing? Anyone in that position, like if your family was they're trying to exterminate your family, you would want to get back at the ones who did that to you. I totally get that. But taking it to the next level where, okay, if let's say somebody tried to kill my family, I would, normal rational thinking beyond emotion is like, okay, I'm gonna get back the ones who tried to hurt me. Am I gonna, like, after that turn around and say, well, now I'm gonna, the neighbors are asking, why did you do this thing, right? And instead of explaining, oh, I'm gonna kill all of you now because now you're trying to like what did we do? We're just like, we didn't know that this person tried to kill your family or killed your father. Why are you attacking us? I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm just saying that this movie made me like see a different perspective of the possibility that the Atreides could actually be viewed as bad guys, as much as you see the Harkonnens are the bad guys because they portray them as the a psychotic fade, and also everything is like black and white, and everything clearly is trying to make it seem like they're the clear cut bad guy. But just like the whole manipulation of the Bene Gesserit and all this political intrigue behind the scenes, for all we know, the Atreides are not any better than any of the houses if they were put in that same position. Because at the end of the day, whichever house, why can't the Fremen like run that plan? Why does it have to be a house that runs that plan?
Right. I never took it as one being nicer than the other. I just took it that they had issues. Took it as a family fight, in-house fighting. I never took it one being nicer than the other, because really they're all oppressors. So I honestly didn't think none of them. You're gonna go by the side of who's telling the story, like I said earlier. So whoever's telling the story, that's who ride you're going on. And so, but in this story, we just chose an oppressor to go. It's almost like that thing with The Walking Dead. You had the people with Negan, you had people with Rick, and it's like, oh, you're following Rick, so Rick is the good guy. But when Negan flipped the story and was like, hey, you came into my camp and killed my people. To me, you're my Negan.
That was a good.
So, but I'm saying, so is this whoever story you're following? But are they all murderers? Yes. Are they all, dictators? Yes. They all, taking advantage of the people, the indigenous people, and pillaging their lands for their resources? Yes. Yes. Are they enslavers? Yes. 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 But we're just watching the story about the in-house fighting amongst brothers and sisters. That's pretty.
Well, and how the
Tokyo
goes,
suffers.
Well, and how the story goes at the end when he's in the hall and he's killed Fade. He doesn't really have enough time to explain to the Lancerod what all went down at that moment. So he's got to be like, look, check it out. I'm going to be the new emperor. I'm going to marry his daughter. That's what's going on. That's why, I should all the spice flow on our, down. So he doesn't have time to have that conversation. He should have that conversation, but now that's not the time to have it.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It also adds the intrigue of like having the next movie, and it's still in line with the books, because he does basically have a jihad. That's the whole purpose of why he didn't want to do it in the first place, because it is going to lead to bloodshed. But in the movie, there is a point when he says, remember when all the ships, the other houses are up there, he says, if they try to do anything, tell them we're going to destroy all the spice. And that should have been, and I know, of course you have to have it the way it ended, because it adds the intrigue of the next movie. I'm just saying that once you have that threat, and then they didn't, why do you still have to launch? Okay, then delay tactic you needed. So you can still explain to them why you did what you did. You don't have to. I'm just bringing it as as a counterpoint.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be the thing. I like the way it ended, and I want the idea of this intrigue of the next movie with the war. I like that. I'm just, as a kind of like just devil's advocate, I'm saying that if you already put the threat that I'm going to destroy the spice, and that holds them back, wouldn't that be the delay tactic you need? Then you can explain to them exactly all the details without actually launching this attack on, like, they're wondering what the hell's, we're not being filled in, and all of a sudden you're at our house with tanks and you're about to attack us.
That makes sense, but like I said, I don't know what the director is going to end up doing or writing, and how he's going to work it in, or the book or whatever. But I know if you need somebody off your butt, you better threaten or whatever's important to them. That's why people have hostages. So the spice is the hostage before they come in. Now, sometimes it's a misunderstanding, and it'd be like, hey, I got somebody in my ear that's telling me to do this stuff. Please don't. But they got to do it to stop you, to pause, so we could make sense of this whole thing. Now, this guy could really be the bad guy, and he could have did stuff wrong. Or it could be like somebody verifying like he won this honestly. But a lot of times, people are going to come in with guns a-blazing unless you say something. If you don't say something to the cops before they come in, they're going to just run in and get you. So you're going to be something you're going to have to say to keep them at bay. So at least you could at least talk. Because if you don't, the assumptions will get you killed.
Yeah, and the thing is once they knew that he was going to destroy the spice, they should have sit back down and said, let's talk. Right. So either side could have said, hey, we need to talk. Really did.
And like I said, we don't know. He gave them the thing. They don't want to acknowledge who he is, and that's fair, because they don't know. Like you said, that dude should be dead.
Yeah, they don't know.
Even everybody in the room was surprised he was alive.
Exactly.
So that's fair. Like somebody's up there, prank calling us saying that he's Paul. Like who's Paul? The ghost? Fire. You know what I mean? So all they keeping them at bay is the fact that the threat of losing all that money. So that's fair. And it's a good place to end it because it's just kind of like, okay, it's a stalemate for now. So them not attacking because they're afraid, that's fair. Them being confused, that's fair. For it to be a stalemate and to keep us as a placeholder until the next movie comes up, I think it was good. I enjoyed it. I saw it twice.
I can respect that. I do think that I think people watching this film are going to be entertained, definitely. And probably the mistake I've made is as I should have been like Joselito and not thought about the books, so much when I watched this, because I used to tell people, watch the movie first, then read the book. If you read the book first and you watch the movie, it's gonna probably ruin it for you because this book has so much detail, and everyone knows how detailed the story is and how it's been so hard to translate to film. It's not just automatically palatable, but I do feel like because of who Denis Villeneuve is and how gifted he is as a director, especially with the cinematography, I do feel like there will be lots of people who are probably converted, more Dune fans probably because of part 2. So in that regard, begrudgingly, I have to say they should watch it. If that's going to get anybody to go read the books, so I'm changing my view. I begrudgingly say go see it.
Oh wow! Did we actually do that? We actually got you to.
Oh, you were light on the fence too, Joselito. Stop it. Stop it.
No, on the first movie, I didn't.
Well, yeah, I still don't like the first movie.
I did not recommend the first movie. I just said that for myself. There were problems, but I like the second movie.
Okay.
The second movie is better. I did admit that, but begrudgingly, go see the film because if you've seen part 2, you'll probably like it.
It's okay.
And
so
like I said, if that's going to get people to want to read the book, then they've done their job. Anytime I see a movie that makes me want to read afterwards, you did your job, at least for me.
That's Captain Keeps. We're closing out. So what are you saying, Joselito?
Okay, I will say that Dune 2, I would recommend this movie. It's definitely a great movie. If you've read the books or watched the Lynch movie, I would recommend to separate those from watching this movie. And if you separate those from Dune 2, then you'll enjoy Dune 2.
Okay.
He's right. That's what I should have done. He's right.
All right. I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed the first movie a lot. I enjoyed this one, not as much, but then when I saw it again, I think I like it just as much, and I like how it connects to the first one. Only thing I could really compare it to was the original movie, which I don't really compare it because, like I said, it's a whole different thing, and I kind of see it as a separate entity, so I kind of treat it as that. So I'm just kind of using the information and feeling off of what I'm seeing and how it relates to the story that this director is telling and showing. I'm digging the characters, I'm digging the storytelling, I'm digging the world building, digging the lore, I'm digging the questioning of Messiah or society or government or capitalism. All those things is very relatable. It's very now. Like I said, I think it was a neat trick to figure out a way to do Dune without doing Dune and without doing Star Wars and those other movies that's definitely borrowed from this. I think that they did a great job of finding a middle ground where it's part art house movie, it's part blockbuster, and it's a nice clear voice that if you aren't to like sci-fi or this kind of lore, but don't want all the questionable parts that you're not open for or ready for, this is a good entry. It's kind of like, like chicken tikka masala. It's cultured food, but then it has some cream in there to kind of thin it out for your palate if you can't really take spicy or certain kind of foods. So this is one of those kind of things that kind of, it gives you the culture, but not too much. And so it's one of those kind of, so it's one of those kind of things. If you really like it, you'll dip into other deeper things, and you have the miniseries, you have the David Lynch, you have the actual books. And so I think this is a nice entryway into the lore, the stories and stuff. And if it's not done exactly the same way that was done in a different medium, at least this is, you still get all the feels, you still get all the little parts. So even though it's done differently, you still get the overall feeling of what's supposed to be going on. And like I said, it's a hard thing to juggle and to pull off. I think it's going pretty good so far. I'm really enjoying these movies. Can't wait for the third one. Hope that there's more, but I know there's supposed to be a show that's coming on HBO about the Bene Gesserits. So I'm looking forward to that. That's supposed to be coming up soon. So I think it's gonna be more insight. And I know some stuff that people like, or different kind of characters or different cultures and stuff that was left out. Like it's called the Mentak.
The Mentats. Mentats was left out.
Like they were left out. Like those characters, people really like those characters.
Yes.
And that's the whole thing. But you know,
human computer.
The need seems to be leaning into like the Bene Gesserits, and that's
that would be
so with him going into this direction, I think that's what he chose. And if somebody else does it later, they might lean into that side of it. And so he's doing with the part that he feels like he has a good narrative to talk about. And sometimes it's better to stick with your strengths and your direction and what you can do versus trying to juggle too much that's out of your league. And if you don't have anything to add, to lend to it, stay out of it. So we're getting the director's taste and what leads to his strengths as a director and a writer. And so, like I said, I'm enjoying what I'm getting so far. It's definitely going to be different than the book, definitely going to be different than the other movies and the other miniseries and stuff. But his interpretation, the things he omitted, the things he put in, the ways he's connected and folded things in, I did truly enjoy. And like I said, I'm looking forward to the next movie. With that being said, man, it was good catching up with you too. This is a great conversation. We covered a lot.
Definitely.
A lot.
Definitely. I wish it could go longer. There's so much more I want to say.
Yeah, you just want to stir the pot, so we could do that. We could do that another day. But we could do more part stirring with your and making up what if stuff when you know that's a whole.
If I want to stir the pot, that's just a testament to how good a movie is. Is if you want to stir the pot, then that means that the movie, for me, it brought out like more than like the expected talking points that most people would want to talk about. That's why I really like this movie, because it started getting me to think about it. Doesn't, like I said, I separate the book and the Lynch movie from this movie, and by being able to do that, I was able to kind of open up to other thinking points that I didn't think about before I saw this movie. So that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, and that's why I really enjoyed them. Like I said, the first one, I know you guys had, legitimate issues, and it was like, based off of, how you guys felt about it and the truth, but like I said, I didn't read the book, so I didn't really have those kind of things. But, and then me not necessarily caring for the original movie at the time, it also wasn't a stumble for me. But like I said, I saw the movie again with Keith and our friend Linda, the original Dune movie. I tried watching it again before, but seeing it on the big screen, and even though it was an edited version, it really made me, seeing these other movies made that movie click. And it just made me also see it's a totally different kind of movie, and it's fine for what it was. And it was an interpretation, and that had a lot of stuff to juggle as well. And so, and some things I thought was kind of cool because it was very direct, and you just like, because I had no problem leaning into a whole bunch of weird stuff. But then also, I enjoy how this is insightful in a different kind of way. This is some artist's interpretation of somebody else's work. I mean, like a real different interpretation, not trying to necessarily glean exactly what is in the books, but how he feels about what he saw and how he takes certain things happening. And when you do that, you have a certain eye and direction that a movie is given because of that, because of your views, because of your perspectives and your feelings about things. Just like if I made this movie be different than how Keith would do it, in the same way it'd be different than how Joselito would do it. But that's the great thing about being an artist and having interpretations. But who would love what the most? Who would know? Who would know? Because then it's up to the audience to decide how they feel about it.
Yeah.
I think if people are really taken to this one, I think, like I said, they might have been, initial good feelings about the first one, but I think more good feelings came because of time and because of it being on streaming and people getting a chance to be familiar and knowing and also pace themselves when watching. And it gave it a great strip to take off of for when the second one came up. And so, like I said, I'm looking forward to a third one, and I had a great time talking with you guys. I didn't know how it was going to go. I know last time was different. It was fun. It was entertaining, but it was, so I didn't know what to expect or how this conversation would go. But I think we hit so much, and even the conversation went wider than I even thought it would. And I appreciate you too, your insight and, knowledge and all that kind of stuff. And just also being willing to have the conversation. It's not easy to sit here and talk for a couple hours about a movie, about anything really, and to have fresh perspectives and insight and being respectful of each other for our feelings and different interpretations of this art. So I appreciate you both.
One final thing I'll say is that for those who haven't seen the movie, if you got to see this movie in the theater first, don't use the streaming as the first. I mean, if it's still in the theaters, as much as possible, because you have to see it with the screen and the sounds. That's one thing I'll say about this movie. It definitely is something that is theater worthy in terms of watching.
Well, cool.
Gotcha.
All right, so this was Jay, Captain Keith, and Joselito talking about the movie Dune Part 2 in theaters now. Catch it if you can. Until next time, peace.
See you somewhere out in space.
All right, take care.
The game's
I know you were. I know, Jason, you were like, let's just end this. We gotta end this soon.